Good morning, everyone. I'm Jonathon Pilch with the Watsonville Wetlands Watch, and this is Yesenia. We're going to be doing this presentation together, so thanks for having us. I'm going to test the clicker. Okay, cool. Cool, thanks. Watsonville Wetlands Watch is new to the California Release Network, so I just wanted to just say thanks so much for having us today. We're also relatively new to urban forestry. We've been an environmental nonprofit for about the past 35 years, and have been working in urban forestry for about 5 years. So we're going to share a little bit of our story of how we came to work in urban forestry and develop the youth leadership program. With that, I will jump into it. So Watsonville Wetlands Watch was founded in the early 90s, in 1991. The organization was an all grassroots, entirely volunteer organization that was trying to stop some of the urban development around the environmental sensitive wetland areas. Sued the city successfully several times, had a lot of impact related to changing the growth policies of the city, and then has gone under a trajectory to develop a staff program, a staffed organization starting around 2000, and has continued in our evolution. For those of you who are not as familiar with the City of Watsonville, that's the city. It's within the Pajaro River floodplain. We work within the City of Watsonville as well as the community of Pajaro, which is on the south bank of the Pajaro River. City of Watsonville is about 52,000 residents. And it's surrounded by an agricultural area. It's home to the Martinelli's company, was founded in Watsonville, if you've heard of that. Driscoll's is founded in Watsonville. It's a big agricultural center, almost a $1 billion agricultural economy in Santa Cruz County. And a lot of the people that live in the city of Watsonville are connected to the agricultural sector, either as in various ways, but a large farm working population in our community. The city, as you can see here, is underlined by an 800-acre freshwater wetland system. It's one of the last remaining coastal freshwater wetlands, the largest coastal freshwater wetlands on the California coast. And the city is nested right into it. The wetlands provide a tremendous amount of wildlife habitat. Where they support over 270 resident and migratory birds, and a tremendous amount of biological diversity. That's right in the city center. But the wetlands have undergone this major transformation beginning in the 1800s. They were all drained for agriculture, like many of the coastal areas like Castroville, Salinas, the valleys on the coast of California, the Bay Area, not as much, but in some degree. The wetlands were all drained and pumped dry seasonally to be farmed. And over the last 20 years, are undergoing a transformation where they're no longer managed in the same way. There's still, a lot of the former wetland areas are still farmed, but a lot of these areas are reverting back to wetlands. We run environmental education programs for about 6,000 young people in our community every year. A big focus is youth mentorship. So we have high school programs where high school students teach middle and elementary school students, an adult docent program that supports these educational efforts. And we run environmental restoration programs that do things like convert agricultural lands into natural floodplain areas that are no longer farmable, recreate restored coastal prairies and grasslands, as you can see in the photo in the center there. That's a restored grassland from what was a strawberry field just a few years prior. And a kind of a central part of this work is connecting community and youth throughout this process. We also manage a 9-mile recreational trail system that winds throughout the wetlands in partnership with the City of Watsonville. So a lot of this work looks like transformation of areas that were drainage canals for agriculture. As you can see here, that's a field that's taken out of production. That's Watsonville Slough in 2011, and now this is what it looks like today. A restored floodplain with riparian trees and a trail that wraps around it.
Okay, so one of our big goals is to connect youth and other residents to the wetlands. So for them to learn about them and learn to love them and then protect them. So here's just like a picture from one of our monthly restoration events. This kid's throwing this giant harding grass, which actually is pretty heavy. And he's one of our high school interns. And each month we do a restoration event at different locations along the slough system. Sometimes they're inside the city, sometimes out, like right on the edge. Aside from monthly volunteer events, we do have 2 or 3 big events a year. So World Wetlands Day is our biggest one. And in that one, we tried, and we also have like Earth Day, we did tree plantings this year. And we try to have our education program interns lead those events, either the stations or they'll run the kids section. So again, just practicing all the skills that they've been learning throughout the year during the field trips and now applying it to like the broader community. So we get those kids to invite the other kids that they've been working with in programs, and then those kids invite their families. Before COVID, our largest World Wetlands Day was like 350 people. This year, we got a little bit over 100, but it was our first big one after COVID, so we're hoping that next year it'll be bigger. So yeah, someone spoke about music, or Wanda spoke about music earlier, and so this year, as part of our entertainment, we had a roving youth mariachi band. So while people were at different stations, we had this group, Mariachi Ilusión, come and perform, and it was really cute. Everybody was a big fan of the little tiny 6-year-old. And during these events, we invited other community members, other orgs doing different kind of work. So, you know, there's that mosaic butterfly that was there, and the people working on that were also doing a different mosaic art event there. And yeah, it's just really fun.
So that's a bit about a background on our programs in general. In 2018, we started an urban forestry program with a CAL FIRE Urban and Community Forestry grant. I'll tell you a little bit in a moment about how we came to do that, but the initial goals of this project were to move from a just under 8% tree canopy to a 30% tree canopy cover, to have equitable tree canopy throughout the city, to develop a youth leadership program, and to modify some of the policy instruments around tree care, ensure long-term tree benefits in the city. City of Watsonville has they have almost essentially no tree protection ordinance. There's no policies or practices that are associated with tree care in the city as of yet. That's a work in process, but so that was an important goal for us, as well as to integrate all of this work within this broader watershed restoration program and education and community building work that we do. We focus on equity and inclusion and creating welcoming spaces for folks to work with us. You know, I think for us, that means a couple things. We know that the youth that we work with are under a lot of pressure to earn income in summer months. They're out working in the fields or fast food restaurants or the Santa Cruz Boardwalk. If you've been there, that's a major teen employer. And so we want to make sure that when we work with youth that we're paying them for their time so that they can accept the ability to be a part of our programs. We're working on thinking about, you know, making sure our tree plantings are in the most areas where they have the greatest benefit for pollution burden or heat stress vulnerability. And then we want to make sure our events are, as Yesenia showed, multicultural. About 3/4 of Watsonville speak a language other than English at home. And so we want to make sure that all of our communication and events are Spanish, multilingual, and bicultural. A little bit on the Watsonville tree canopy. We're undergoing a process right now with Davie Resources Group and the City of Watsonville to develop an urban forest management plan. So I just wanted to give you a bit of sense of what the tree canopy is like. We know today we have 9.4% tree canopy. About 60% of the city is impervious. Just under 3.5% is open water, those wetlands. We have about 24% pervious, including bare soils. Tree canopy and sidewalks is very almost non-existent at under 4%. In total, we have 4,500 trees on streets and parks, public facilities. And so there's a lot of room for tree planting throughout the city of Watsonville, but it's also a really challenging environment. We have small sidewalk spaces, and just a lot of industrial areas, so like lots of need for clearance and things like that. So it's a pretty constrained environment, but that hopefully gives you a sense of our current tree canopy. Watsonville in our region on the Monterey Bay area is the lowest, has the lowest tree canopy of cities of like size. So you can see Watsonville at the bottom with 9.4, below San Jose, Morgan Hill, Pacific Grove, and the city of Santa Cruz, which is around almost 40%, which is the closest city in Santa Cruz County. Because we've been working in Watsonville for a long time, a part of our urban forestry work is leveraging these long-standing partnerships. We have a good working relationship with the city of Watsonville. We've collaborated on building programs for over 20 years. We have existing contractual relationships, so we have kind of the mechanisms as well as the staff relationships to help build programs together. Our organization works very closely with the local school district. We operate a wetlands education center on a high school campus. And so because of that, we get free rent and utilities for 99 years is our current arrangement, which is great as a nonprofit, as I'm sure all of you can imagine. But also because we're on a high school campus, we have both the culture of the school district as, you know, a part of our organizational culture, but also the connections with both youth and the school district administration so that we can integrate our programs really seamlessly with in-school and after-school programming. We wanted to share a little bit of the planning context and how, you know, aside from tree planting work, which we'll talk about in a moment, how we've been able to help get urban forestry starting to be institutionalized in the city of Watsonville. So the seed for this program was started with an urban greening plan in 2012, called for an ambitious, perhaps overly ambitious goal of 40,000 new trees for the city, and depending on the timeline, I suppose. But at that time, it was a 7.8% canopy cover, and there was no urban forester, there was no staff that had any knowledge of urban forestry, there was no policies, practices, or personnel that were devoted to tree care aside from public works staff and park staff that had little training around tree care. So it was a long road to go. We've been able to get tree care and tree planting programs integrated into the city's climate action and adaptation plan. The local hazard mitigation plan, which was created in 2018, did some good analysis of urban heat island effect and heat stress vulnerabilities in the city, so we could start to think about how tree planting can be most effective for those areas that are the highest, will have the highest heat in the city. We also have integrated this thinking into a recent green infrastructure plan that was funded by the California Resiliency Challenge. And so really thinking about how to tie in urban tree planting with stormwater design and a stormwater approach, especially important in a city like Watsonville, where we have a lot of pollution and impairment of our wetlands, and 70%, for example, of the streets drain directly untreated to the wetlands that underlie the city. And then more recently, we've been obtaining funding, for example, through the Ocean Protection Council to develop wetland restoration projects. And now we're starting to integrate in tree planting components as part of that within this lens of the community work that Yesenia described.
So we have two main tree planting programs, our shade tree program and our fruit tree program. For our shade tree program, we started focusing on parks first and on the available planting strips in neighborhoods. And all of this was done through community volunteer days. And we've planted at almost every park in Watsonville now. And so we've started thinking about transitioning into a residential shade planting program. It is a pilot program, so we're still like learning a lot of things. And most of the available space left to plant trees is in private property. The best part about this for like our staff is that the residents are then in charge of watering their own tree, because we do have to water so many throughout the city that it's like really helpful to take some off of our like list that we have to care for, but basically we just do a site visit after they apply through our website on a Google form, or they could call in. We put up bilingual posters at different businesses and on trail kiosks so people can know that it's a thing. We also share the information on social media, and we even had a big banner downtown for a while. We provide people with free trees, stakes, ties, and mulch. And then the first 3 years, we offer help with pruning and any maintenance questions that they might have. The other program is our fruit tree program, and this one has been like very popular. We started off by just rotating to different parks in the neighborhood. So I think our first one was actually at our building, but then we thought about how do we get to different people. So the first one, it was people who were like on our newsletter, people who had seen our social media posts, but there is kind of like a technology gap sometimes. And so we thought, okay, how do we get the word out better? So we just started going to different parks around the city and then flyering that neighborhood. And so then people then told their neighbors. And so like at one park, we had like 68 people, and that was a lot to deal with because I think it was only our third workshop. Now we've started to switch our fruit tree program from parks. We're partnering with Life Lab, who does school gardens. So we're now putting sign-up sheets at the schools a month before. Well, we've only done one so far, and I have one next week. But you put in a sign-in sheet the month before, and people can pick which type of tree they might be interested in. They come and they attend the workshop, and a big point for us at the workshop is to teach them how to actually care for the tree, so then when they take it home, it doesn't just die. We do give them a folder with all the information. That way they don't have to worry about writing anything down. And it has our phone number, and I always tell them you can call us whenever you have questions. For our shade trees, we do put on these little tags. In the back, it has like information on who the funders are, and then in the front, it just has the species, location, and like the number. And this helps us with our maintenance log and to keep track of what's been pruned or watered. And then it also, we try to make them special by having quotes from the first ever tree planting event that we had of people like, why do you think trees are important? And we also had those translated. So quotes that were given to us in Spanish were translated into English, and quotes that were in English were translated into Spanish. Then for like when COVID was going on, one of the big ways that we continued to be able to do tree planting was through our Climate Corps Leadership Institute internship, which is for high school interns. And this is high school kids from 3 different high schools in Watsonville. And it started off as a hybrid program. We had a day in person and then a day that was virtual. And we were like one of the only ways that those kids got to see other kids in person. So we heard a lot of that being like a positive thing for them because otherwise they were super isolated. And it's a paid internship, and we just want to make sure that we're able to be like competitive and be able to provide them a stipend. The main things were to teach them urban forestry, watershed restoration, and climate action, and to really build the skill and like confidence to be able to talk about these topics with their parents and their peers and other community members. So they've gone out and talked to people about like, why don't you have your reusable shopping bag? And they're going to host an unconference this month, and that's basically where people come in. And it's kind of an informal conference, and they're able to have conversations. And if they feel the topic is done, then they can move on to a different one. So that's exciting. The program is 2 to 3 weeks during the summer, and then it's followed by a year of work projects. Something really exciting that's going on is that CCLI students who decide to come back for a second year then have to pick a topic that they can focus on. And some of the students choose urban forestry. Some have chosen to highlight like slow fashion and how to combat fast fashion. We've had students that went on to work on the Farms to Cafeteria program because we do live in a huge agricultural like hub, and yet a lot of our food for schools is shipped in from other places, and it's not organic. They've also led tree planting events at schools. The 2 schools that we've done the most work at has been Pajaro Valley High School, which is where our office is located. They put 120 trees, and then they put 50 trees at Pajaro Middle School, which we'll touch on like later. And they've also led tree plantings. We had our first business apply for trees, and they put 7 trees at the back of El Pueblo Market. And We also did trainings with them with little maps and the tree maintenance, like logs. They were able to go around parks and say, like, okay, like, is this tree properly staked? Have the stakes been messed with? Do the ties need to be tightened? Is there enough mulch? And it was just to kind of show them, like, this is kind of what your job might look like if you were doing tree care. This is a quote from Sophia, one of our interns from the first year, and the number's wrong on the cohort year, but yeah, she said, these programs have created and formed me into the leader that I am today. They gave me a platform to connect with my community and revealed to me that the power of my voice, it sparked my self-confidence. So we encourage them to build leadership skills by taking active roles when we do events, like this is the city's Earth Day, and this is where they get to practice those climate communication skills that they've been learning. Something that's really exciting for us is that one of our first-year CCLI students is now a board member at Watsonville Wetlands Watch. And then we had 2 CCLI students that after they graduated high school went on to work at the county as interns, and they worked on the Climate Action Adaptation Plan. And the county liked Watsonville's Climate Adaptation Plan so much that they kind of modeled theirs after the cities. And so the students got to also push for more trees to be in that plan. So yeah, here's another quote from Alma, and she said, "We don't have to wait for the future to create change. We can do this throughout our lives."
One of the aspects of this program that has been something that we didn't foresee, though it has been kind of connected to the program from its initiation, has been this connection with local crises. I know that we're all experiencing these in different ways, but a big thing that we've experienced in Watsonville and the Pajaro Valley. The program was kind of born in the pandemic. It evolved out of other programs that we were running, but really was based in that, it really kind of grew out of that experience. And urban forestry for us too, as an organization, we've really leaned into it much more so because of the public health benefits and much broader benefits than some of the other environmental restoration kind of programs that we've run that have more very strong environmental outcomes, but less direct public health connections. So coming out of that pandemic, and then in August 2020, we had the CZU fire that was in the Santa Cruz Mountains. The fire wasn't directly in the city of Watsonville or surrounding it, but we had weeks of heavy smoke, red skies, and our community felt that fire very strongly. This is a photograph from a local National Geographic photographer who's documenting the revitalization of the Monterey Bay. And so we were able to use that experience that next summer, thanks to California Relief, and develop one extra week as part of our summer training that was focused on fire suppression, fuel load reduction, and fire and fuel load management and the connection to climate change. So the students were able to work with the local CAL FIRE representatives and really dive into that issue much more meaningfully. This past November, we did a tree planting at Pajaro Middle School, which is in the community of Pajaro, just to the south of the city of Watsonville. That's the school there behind me. Has very low tree canopy cover. It's under 6% on the school campus, but most of the trees are at the perimeter and the far edges of the field. There's a couple trees within the campus itself. It's surrounded by industrial areas, a large agricultural part to the west, and industrial areas that surround it. And the school faculty came to us and said one of their major goals was reducing dust and airborne particles and pesticide drift onto the school campus. So we planted we hosted a volunteer day in November with the Pajaro Valley Ohlone Indian Council, a lot of community volunteers and parents and families. We planted a large windbreak along the school edge to reduce that pesticide drift and dust and wind, shade trees throughout the school campus, and a school orchard. And then this March, as we're all aware of the extreme flooding events, the Pajaro River levee breached on the south side, flooding completely the town of Pajaro, inundating the town over 3 feet, and that's the school to the left there. And so the students had to move off the campus and haven't returned yet. We feel good that we've started a process that's going to be part of a long-term recovery. We're talking with the school district and the school community about how to build, what that recovery looks like, and working on expanding. And there's a lot of openness to that idea, and to build something better on that campus that can help be part of that recovery. And so for all of these students, they've gone through so much, and climate change is looming, and it has the opportunity to be this very fearful, thing. And so, but the opposite experience is what we're seeing with the students. They're hopeful, positive, they feel connected to each other, they feel supported by the adults in their community. And that's exemplified by this quote from one of our students. Climate change is currently a huge problem in our world, but we can make a change. If I can make more teenagers my age care, then we can save our planet. I want teenagers my age and those who are younger to know that they can be a leader, that their voice are heard, that even small actions make a difference. And we wanted to share these quotes because they're just a few small nuggets, but it's things that we hear really all the time, and is true for a lot of the students that we're working with. So briefly, to date, we've graduated 48 Climate Corps leadership participants, planted 656 and cared for trees on 58 schools, streets, and parks, distributed 837 fruit trees through the program Yesenia has been described and runs. We've increased tree canopy from under 8% to 9.4%. 10% of our trees and rights-of-ways have been planted since 2018. So we're making measurable progress, and we're working with the city on drafting a tree protection ordinance that will go to the city council this year, as well as a 40-year management plan that's under development right now, that will hopefully start the process of understanding the relationship between nonprofit and city, but also city staffing and things like that. The work is integrated within this larger restoration program and connected to our wetlands programs. And overall, we feel like all of these forces combined, the youth programs, education, community work, and effective growing and learning and stumbling tree planting programs are translating into a lot of momentum that we think is going to carry us forward for lots of good things to come. So, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And thanks to our funders and partners that you can see here on the slide.
All right, questions? Hi, thank you guys. So I'm with Canopy, and I had a question. You guys said you did your tree canopy analysis, and you had the data for how many open spaces there were, how much like planting place you had. Just wanted to know what you used to gather that data.
That was all done through.
All right, we got another question back here in the corner.
So you mentioned, Yesenia, that you have a youth who's serving on the board. Can you talk more about that? Like, what was the process like, and how did the board react?
I don't know how our board gets selected, to be honest. I think that's like you can answer that, but I know that the board reaction in general has been great. Most of our board is older and white, and she's one of the two younger Latina women on the board. The other person is my age, and so she's 18, and the board has been super excited. We're going through our strategic plan where we're doing it as an org, and so she's attended the meetings. Everyone's just really excited. I'm really proud. I don't know, like people say you see them as your babies, and I know I get told not to call them that, but like they're the same ages as my nephews and nieces, so it's hard not to. Yeah.
And just to add on to that, so Jennifer got an internship at the county. She was one of the folks that Yesenia described, and she connected with a colleague and who just said, hey, why don't you consider joining the Watsonville Wetlands Watch board as a offhand comment, and she reached out to me, and we were able to encourage her to do that. So it was self-directed, really, and through that connection with a county staffer.
Yeah, and then as part of our general plan, we did kind of like a visioning exercise and kind of what would you like to see happen in the future. And she mentioned that she would like to see a CCL, a former intern, become a board member, become like a regular thing. So kind of we're thinking about how do we keep that going.
Hi, I'm Katie from Roseville Urban Forest Foundation. In general, what do you pay your interns, and how are they funded directly?
They get a stipend of $500 for the semester. So they meet with us just on Mondays. So we only have them one day after school for like 2 hours. So if they needed to have another job or if they have sports, then they can continue to do that. But how do we get funded?
Yeah, so they end up over the course of a year make about $1,500 right now. So it's a summer stipend and then a per semester stipend. And it's funded primarily through private foundation funding, a private foundation grant through the Packard Foundation is one of our funders, but we sort of blend it all together. We have no committed funding as a nonprofit, so it's all a mix of government and private foundation and donors. We actually have a number of family foundations that have started to support the urban forestry work, so kind of a blend.
Yeah, and then some like long-term donors sometimes give us money for scholarships for the kids. So we open scholarships for seniors, and we encourage interns from both the Wetland Stewards Program and the Climate Corps Program to like apply for those, and then that's another way they can get money, but that's for school specifically.
So do you consider, are you an employee or employer then, and they're employees? And so are these $1,500, do they need to go through formal payments and tax, that whole thing?
I can't answer that question. No, we have a ladder of experiences. So we have high school students that get paid stipends that are not employed by the organization. It's an educational stipend. And then we also offer a post-high school internship that's paid summer months for watering trees throughout the city. And that's also an educational paid stipend. So what's important for that is that it's not just labor, but that it's a learning process, and that, a large percentage of the time is not just spent working, but learning. And then we have a position that's generally open for an entry-level staffer. That would be a paid staff position that when they're working, say, 20 hours a week or greater, sometimes 16 hours. We try to encourage folks who are going to local colleges to work with us as well and fit that in with their schedule. And at that point, it would be a paid staff position. But we have 30 high school interns right now between two programs. So that would be a major payroll challenge if they were on payroll. Yeah, for that would be $18 an hour would be like our entry level. But over the last few years, there's a lot of work that we've been working on and work to be done around like what is the right levels of pay for those. But that's where we start, and they're benefited positions if anybody works 20 hours a week or more.
Time for one more question.
Hi, I'm Janine Strickland. I'm with the Watershed Project. I wondered, does the City of Watsonville partner with your organization? Are you a contractor, or what is that relationship like? Yeah,
I'll answer briefly, and then Yesenia can add in. But we're a contractor to the city, and on a contractual basis, we do a lot of co-grant writing. So there's some advantages to that around sole source contracts that you can. That makes sense when we're writing grants together, but we don't have all of our funding through the city comes through a contracting process, and some of it's competitive and some of it's co-written, and so there's more streamlined contracting for that. Do you want to speak to just general partnership?
With the city, yeah. So some of the contracts for like the wetlands trail maintenance is just for like mowing. So we'll go out and we'll partner with the crews on that. Some is for tree care. So we go out and we're getting to know like the park staff better. And they have a new parks director and he's been sending more of his staff to like our events. So that relationship is growing, which is really nice. I also do some education work around waste reduction, so that's a separate contract, and I have a group of students that I have like a club with, and they collect compost during lunch, so that's a different one, and yeah, we get to work with them a lot. We do field trips sometimes together, and they are trying to secure all of their funding for a new city nature center. Before it was just this tiny little what would you call that building?
Like a little trailer.
Yeah, like a trailer, and then now we're trying to get a big building, and if that happens, they're gonna, because we are growing and that building we're in is kind of, we're already a little crowded, they're gonna offer us desk space there, and yeah, we just do a lot of field trips together for kids, and the city wasn't always super excited about the wetlands, especially when we started off like as an org suing them. And so now the partnership is super positive, and yeah, but before there was beef, now things are better, yeah.
Yeah, but I'd say key to our success has been that relationship as we've grown as an organization, and key to our mission success, but also just organizationally.
Yeah. They even kind of copied our logo, which I like always let people know, because ours is circular and has a bird in it and wetlands, and then suddenly they changed theirs to be circular and have a bird and have wetlands, so.
Wonderful. Thank you